Good evening. Library, thank you for coming. Just for your information, if you didn't already know, the program will be filmed and made available by Waycam. So if you prefer that the back of your head not be on camera, please feel free to sit towards the back. Award-winning educator Michael Delman is a pioneer and leader in the area of executive function. Been a Wayland for over 20 years. He is the founder of Beyond BookSmart, the nation's largest executive function coaching company, established in 2006. Michael co-founded and was principal of McAuliffe Charter School in Framingham. Michael brings his enthusiasm to his work with students and adults alike, helping them discover their strengths, develop their confidence, and become more effective. We are excited to have Michael here tonight, so please join me in welcoming him to the library.
So probably the most exciting part of the night for me is seeing if the microphone actually works. Are we good? Is that good? All right then. So I'm really glad to be here in Wayland. I've been traveling over the past year, talking about the book that I wrote and helping parents and professionals understand a bit more about executive function skills, what they are, and how to help our kids develop them. So tonight there will be a dash of optimism, dare I say. There will be a heavy dose of kind of strategic orientation for helping our kids, so what's kind of the overall strategic leaning. And there will be a plethora of tools and tactics to get there too. Plenty of time for question and answer too, so feel free to ask questions as we go. I'll certainly make time for it. To begin with, just overall orientation I think is important, is to have the right perspective on our kids. And this is hard to do because what we tend to do is to look at them in this particular moment, on this particular day, and to go, oh my gosh, this is a problem, and I don't know if it's ever going to be okay. And a couple of things to that. The first is, a good metaphor for this is that of growing a tree or planting. If you plant a little seed in the ground and you just stare at it every day, it seems like nothing. And worse still, if you dig it up every day to check on it, like, are you okay? Are you okay, little seed? It's not going to grow. What you do is you plant it, make sure that it's adequately watered, gets exposure to the sun, and it's freed up from the weeds and so forth, and you make sure it gets on its way. But that angst, that extra worry that we are wired for as parents actually doesn't add a great deal of benefit. In fact, it can really get in the way. So that's kind of the overall orientation, is toward that patience of growing trees. So I'll mention that a couple of times so that start to sink in a little bit, the patience of growing trees. A bunch of years ago, I want to say it's almost 20 years ago, I started a school, this charter school in Framingham, and people would often ask me, is it a school for troubled kids? And I'd say, well, it's a middle school, so yes. The fact is that all of our kids go through these various changes, and it's very hard for us as parents because we tend to see our own lens of, oh my God, my first kid, and I'm so okay. And whereas people who have kids tend to see it a little differently, because you've seen how kids have gone through so many challenges and how overall they mostly work things out, kind of challenges. This is kind of an audacious title, and when people have asked me, if I buy this book with a guarantee, here's what I'll guarantee. A guarantee the cover is the single best page, and that it will give you a sense of relief if you read it and you start to take it to heart. Because that alone, that belief that things will be okay, actually provides some of the right orientation, that big picture, toward things actually being okay. Now, bland reassurances aside, I'm going to delve into some of the specifics, but that is the biggest picture we're going to look at for tonight. So, let's talk about a kid with no name who's got two obvious problems. The first is, look at him. He doesn't look like he's particularly excited about his homework, doesn't look like he's going to get to it. And the second, some of you may be noticing, is that little cassette, like, why is he using one of those? And the answer is, it's an outdated picture. But what I'd like you to do is to think for a moment as a group here. And we're going to use a little exercise that educators sometimes do called Thinkpairshare, where I'm going to ask you just to think about it, not so much about the tape, but about the boy, and think, why don't kids just hop onto their homework when they get home? I think some do, but why do so many not do that? Just think about it for a moment, and don't just go with the first answer that comes to your mind. Think about 2 reasons, or 3, or 5. What are the various reasons why someone just doesn't get going on the homework? And then I'm going to ask you to take a moment, and I said this is called Think, Pair, Share. We won't do a lot of these, just one tonight. And just find someone near you and share out your answers. If someone you don't know, all the better. Let's get as many reasons as you can with the people right near you. Why doesn't a kid just jump onto their homework? Go ahead. At least 2 reasons per pair. Or triad. It can be a group of 3. Wow. All right. So if you can hear me right now, can you give me a quick wave just so I know you're back to listening? Okay, great. That was outstanding. So now we go to the third part, Think, Pair, Share. So we just did the pair. Now volunteers just, what's one thing someone in your group said or that you came up with? What's one reason kid doesn't want to get to their homework right away? Survey says tired. Very good. What's another reason? Hungry. What else? Lack of passion for it. Memory issues. Okay. What else? Procrastination. Why? Why do they procrastinate? What makes them procrastinate? Keep going. Procrastination, bad habits maybe, yep. It's hard. Any thoughts? Any more?
Fear of not being perfect.
Ooh, fear of imperfection. Not wanting to fail. Yeah. Okay, the stuff's just boring. Yeah? Yeah, no transition time. Excellent. Wow, okay. Raise your hand if you just heard at least one answer that you yourself hadn't perhaps thought of. You heard something from somebody else. It was like, that was pretty good. I don't know if I would have thought of that one. Okay. I hope you heard something. What's neat to see is, and I especially value this in town, when I'm presenting in my own hometown, because it's great to see what we can learn from each other. You don't just have to read books, talk, listen to lectures, etc. You can learn from all sorts of people. I want to share a few different reasons here into, broadly speaking, 2 categories. One, intellectual challenges. Now, by the way, this whole slideshow will be available for you. There are going to be a bunch of things up here. You don't have to jot down everything. So you can take a photo as well, which will help. You'll see. So here are a few. There are generally intellectual challenges and affective or more kind of emotional challenges. So didn't remember to record the assignment. Never happened to my kid, ever. Okay, recorded but not accurately. Didn't bring the materials home. Didn't understand the tasks. No plan for the night. Study environment. I walked into a house. I was meeting with a family for the first time. This is part of my coaching business. And I was getting a tour of the place and where the student did his homework. And it was in this beautiful breakfast room with windows everywhere and bird feeders all outside the windows. And there were so many species and varieties of birds flittering this way and that. I completely forgot why I was even at the house. And I said, how's your son do studying here? He said, he just can't focus. I said, I can't either. So, we found a better room that was more stead and fewer windows and dark and, painful chairs to sit in, the perfect environment. Okay. Not having a good start time. So, yeah, I'm not feeling it yet. No, I'll wait. I'll do it later. Wait. Too late, right? Okay. Inability to manage normal distractions. I don't mean the birds. I mean just your typical distractions that are going to pop up for anybody. Not taking breaks when they need to and not returning from breaks at a reasonable time. Not completing all parts of the homework. Not noticing when they're confused. This is a killer. That one's really tough. Not knowing how to problem solve even when you do know what the problem is. And then not knowing how to get help when you need it. Not doing quality check, not filing the assignment, and finally, for the real heartbreaker, not remembering to turn it in. Okay, and of course, always remembering to review for missing work. So these are 17 different reasons. So when parents say to me, my kid's not doing his homework, my daughter's not doing her homework, what can we do about it? I say, well, let's figure out where, out of these, what are the reasons? You need the diagnosis before you can get to the cure. So, but there are more. I like to give lots of bad news at once. So let's go to additional reasons. So there are these affective challenges that have to do with the way you feel too. So somebody mentioned hungry. Hungry is going to fall under a category that we call HALT, meaning better slow down. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If your kid is hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, you can do whatever you want. You're not going to get a productive kid out of it. So, exhausted, we heard. Anxious. Bored, we heard that one. Aggravated. This one often has to do with the teacher. I don't like that teacher, so I don't want to do their work, or they'll do that teacher's homework at last, like they're punishing the teacher somehow. I had a student, at the end of the year, I said, what did you learn? She said, I learned at the end of the year, I'm done with that teacher, but I'm never done with that grade she gave me. Yeah, that's it. So there's a maturing that happens where you realize it's not about the teacher, is it? It's about what you can get out of it. Overwhelmed, which is further along than anxious. Fear of failure, someone brought that up. That's people miss that one a lot, and it's a really important one. Confused, ambivalent. This is an interesting one. I had a student say to me, my goal this term is to get an A in science, straight A, no minus on it. I said, all right, what would be the downside of getting an A? She looked at me like I had two heads. She said, what do you mean the downside of getting an A? Why would there be a downside? Anyone be able to think of it? What would be the downside to perhaps getting an A if you'd always gotten B's? Any negative side to getting an A?
The expectation then is always there for the future.
Yeah, whose expectation?
Parental.
Good. And your own too. So yeah, so you get an A, and now your parents say, well, you got an A last term. Clearly you could do it. It took her a little while to come to that, but it helped her realize it. She ended up getting the A once she realized, oh my gosh. Yeah, and her parents actually wrote her a note saying, we will not pressure you to get for repeat performances and encores. Whatever you get is up to you. This is your life. So that was great. Depression, real thing for a lot of kids these days. And my favorite one is the hungry one. So many reasons. And I'm sure there are plenty more, but those are some of the reasons why kids are struggling, don't do what we want them to do, what we expect them to do. All right, so more broadly, why are we here? In the end, what we're here for is to help our kids develop these what are called executive function skills, which are skills for getting things done. Getting things done. So basic skills of how to focus and manage stress, how to get organized and prioritize and plan. I'll go over them in more detail in a moment. The big picture is, for a lot of people, it's things like, my kid's got ADHD of one type or another, inattentive, hyperactive, impulsive, or both. LBLD, these are things like language-based learning disabilities, like dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. Anxiety, this is epidemic these days. The whole disorganization piece. I love that graphic. The idea about motivation, we'll talk about this. Is it a motivation issue, or if so, why? Like, what's behind the motivation question? And then this kind of, again, will my kid make it? And again, that whole title that I kind of went out on the limb with, which your kid's going to be okay, and you're like, really? Well, I think it's the reassurance we need to begin with. So let's talk about us for a minute as parents and professionals, most of us. The parents and professionals. we're worried a lot, but is it all in our heads? Are we just crazy? Okay, we all know we're crazy, but is it just that we're crazy? The answer is no, it's not. It's not just in our heads. Part of it is competition really has increased. Any of us who have kids who are high school age, juniors, seniors, early college, we've been there with them, and we can't believe how much harder it is for them to get into schools. Like we wouldn't get into our own schools nowadays if we applied for the ones we got into. We wouldn't be getting in there. We were at, my wife and I, we were at our daughter's freshman orientation last year, and they're like bragging, the college. This was the hardest year ever to get into our college. We had a 0% acceptance rate. Nobody got in. If you're here, you're mistaken, kind of thing. So the competition is really, really, really stringent. Secondly, the college dropout rate is frightening. Statistics I'm most familiar with are 20% of students do not return to college for they don't finish their freshman year and don't return for their sophomore year. If you take the number of kids who transfer out, it jumps up even higher. Then there's the 6-year graduation rate, not 4-year, 6-year graduation rate, which is about 60%. So that means 40% of kids are taking 6 years or more or not graduating. Now, those are not, it varies widely depending on what college they're at, but it's still, it clearly is a real issue. And the money that's spent, the energy, the despair and all that is a big deal. And then we've got this, which I'm going to skip over because it's, I think, a misnomer. This is a new one. It's relatively new. When I was growing up, and my parents got that occasional call home from the school principal, which they did, my parents didn't go, oh, where have we failed? I don't know, Judy, we're terrible parents. No, it was, Michael, come here. What is going on with you? Why did you do that? I'm like, I don't know why I did that. But now we've got social media and everyone's showing how their perfect kid did this and that. And it's a much harder thing as a parent. We're very self-aware of any possible failings. So why I didn't want to make a title like how you can be a better parent. We already are worried about that. And then there are disabilities, diagnosed, not diagnosed, but they make things both easier when you have a diagnosis and also challenging. And the stresses that go along with that. So let's talk about the kids for a minute. The kids are, we would say, often distracted and anxious. We like to say here that they live in the age of attention. So it wasn't long ago when we were talking about the information age. I don't know if you guys remember the information age, because it's not here anymore, or the knowledge age or whatever. It was when, oh my gosh, did you know a lot? Were you really, really knowledgeable? Now, the real commodity, the real resource is attention. Can you focus for 20 minutes or more on something that you don't want to do? That is the kind of thing that gives you traction, it gives you success, the ability to focus on things that may be difficult and even uninteresting. Of course, we want kids pursuing their passions and all. That's great. That's important. But you need to be able to have some gumption and be able to get through some of the difficult things. So this is a difficult time. And as an example, I'm going to mention this new technology. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's called Netflix. Does anyone know it? Okay, I just recently found it, and it's this weird thing. They show you these videos, like movies and shows, and when you're done watching an episode on Netflix, as soon as it finishes, do you know what? It goes, next episode in 3, 2, 1, and then you have to watch it because it pops up automatically. There's no way around it. You're simply stuck watching that. Has anyone else had this happen to them? Just me. Okay, so this is the thing. We've got these things, and we know it ourselves. We feel that the tug of our hand toward the phone all the time, and that's us. And we have much more mature brains if we're age 25 or above, which is a lot of us in the room. And so we still struggle with impulse control and managing these amazing distractions. When we were younger, many of us, anyone remember Atari and Pong, the game Pong? Remember when that came out? That was so amazing. It was this, right, like you had a rectangle here and the other person had a rectangle, and it would kind of float up and down, and then there would be a little ball that would go across the screen. And the whole game was trying to stop the ball from going past your your little paddle. And that was the dumbest game ever, and yet we could play that for a long time. Think about the things kids have now. Things like Fortnite and Snapchat that are just so alluring. They're deliberately built to keep you going. They get your adrenaline system going, then you feel a sense of depletion afterward, and then you need another hit, right? And the dopamine is activated, and all these neurotransmitters are going, and it is really an amazing temptation. How many of you have played Fortnite, by the way? Just raise your hand. Just me. I'm the only person in this room. Okay, let me tell you something. I did it as an experiment initially, just to find out what some of these kids are up to. Try it. Try doing it and playing it long enough to know what the heck is going on, and then see if you can just stop in the middle of a game. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. And so we at least say, oh, they have no discipline, and they're so lazy, and because they're not playing Atari. You know, they're not just like taking two rocks and banging them together like, oh, this is our favorite game. They have really exciting games. And Snapchat, how many of you know what streaks are? At this point, probably a bunch of you, but not everybody, right? How many of you know what streaks are? Right? How many of you do not know what streaks are on Snapchat? Most of you. I didn't know what the buzz was about why our younger daughter was so into Snapchat. I thought it's about sending pictures and the pictures disappear. It sounds like a really bad thing. Tempting to, people send inappropriate pictures. That's not even it. No, they keep these streaks with their friends. So every day they have to take a picture and send it and keep the streak going. That's why they're hooked. I'm going to camp for a couple weeks. Can you watch my phone? Can you have, here's my password. Can you keep up my hundreds of streaks with people I don't even know, but they're going to feel bad if I neglect? So the point is, age, we need to understand all this stuff before we judge it and criticize it. If we do understand it, we understand the increase in screen time. It doesn't mean it's good. I'm not saying this is great stuff, except Fortnite. No, I'm not saying it's great stuff. I'm just saying that it's very helpful to understand why it's so compelling to them. Okay. And why it matters is we're looking at the development of the brain over these years. And what we see is that the brain is still very much in development until the mid to late 20s. There are two things here that probably will concern you. They tend to concern most of the groups I speak to. The first is this very steep curve here, going, oh no, my kid's older than 6. It's too late. No, it's not too late. These skills develop in kind of a... So, sure, when they're younger, there's a lot of development, but the skills continue to come back around and around and around. So you didn't miss your chance. The other thing that concerns a lot of the people I present to is the fact that we are older than 29 and you see a little decline. That's okay. We have secretaries. No, we've got compensatory strategies. We've learned over time to get habits that help us along, so we can still compete with those people in their 20s and younger. So don't worry too much. But it is important to note that without doing anything, our cognition and our abilities to keep up with some of these skills does decline a little bit. So what we need is these self-management skills, these executive function skills. These are the skills that help us to become competent and confident. They're learnable, teachable skills for the most part. A couple are a little harder. And they allow distractions and anxiety to diminish. So what are they specifically? So depends who you talk to. Some of the professionals will list 31. We're going to focus on a few of the most important and easily and best taught ones. First, stress management, managing emotions, managing stress and insufficient stress, so boredom and stress. Secondly, attention, being able to get started on things you don't want to do and being able to stay focused, so task initiation and sustained attention. Being able to plan and prioritize your time, so that in that limited amount of time we have every day and over the course of a week, month, year, and a life, you get to the things that are really interesting and worthwhile. Being organized, skill to accomplish that. And the last one, being able to reflect on your efficacy. Being able to self-monitor. Am I on track? Am I off track? Could I do anything a little bit better? How am I doing? Those kinds of skills. All right, I want to pause here to see if there are any questions thus far before we move into... identifying kids and tools and strategies.
Assessments that help you to determine
Yes.
your children are doing.
There are. So there's one called the Behavioral Rating Inventory of Executive Function Skills. It's called the Brief, which is actually a long name if you spell it out, but it's the Brief. There's the DCEFs. There are various ones that psychometricians, neuropsychologists, school psychologists use. So there's that. And then, like, we have our own proprietary one at Beyond BookSmart that we've developed. And then you could probably just go online, and find very simple things too. But the basic one, kind of this. You have a gut sense. Now, the other part of the gut sense is talking to a school teacher. As I said, when your N is 1, you've got one kid, or you've got 2 or 3 kids. How do you know? And you might look at their friends and, well, here's my kid compared to their friend. But it's helpful to talk to the teachers and to say, how's my kid doing with just overall being organized, being, planful and mindful, and managing stress and those kinds of things. But if there's a real big problem, you probably have a gut sense of it. And that's usually when you want to begin by talking to school personnel. And it's free for them to give you an opinion, and it's free for them ultimately to do testing if there seems to be, seems warranted. Other questions before I move on? Yes, sir. That's an easy question. It's the simplest one I've ever gotten. How'd I do? Okay. Yes. Say the curve, like going back a couple slides to that developmental trajectory. Yeah, sure. So that trajectory that you're seeing, first of all, these are averages, and they tend to vary a bit what you're going to see based on the age. So in those early years, what you're talking about a lot has to do with things like impulse control. So this is a kid learning, for example, at the age of 3, that the word no actually means something. Apparently there are a lot of people who could learn that better. So no means no. And then learning, for example, to understand that there's such a thing as waiting your turn and those kinds of things. Some of the socialization issues that we see and that teachers teach in preschool and kindergarten and so forth that are really, really important. As they get a little bit older, you're looking at things like being able to follow simple directions, like, okay, class, we're all going to do this. So attuning to that and being able to make transitions. So, we're going from here, from this activity to that activity. So you have to listen, which means disrupting what you're already doing. So it means turning away your attention from what you're currently doing and then focusing on the teacher. That's why teachers have these great things like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, and then the kids go 1, 2, eyes on you. Well, it's a way to get everybody's attention. And it's because for some kids, that's actually a really difficult skill, right? You get a little bit older, and it goes from that sort of thing and being able to manage impulses and being able to transition and follow directions to now you've got multi-step directions. This is where everybody gets their favorite thing like word problems in math, which is actually, can I put things into my own words, right? Paraphrasing. And can I follow a multi-step direction, which means holding one thing in my memory. Wait, I did this, and then I got to do this. Wait, what was this again? So those kinds of issues. And then they get a little older and they have to do things like being able to plan a bit, plan out their week and so on. And really learning, to regulate themselves. So all those things build over time. But in those early years, those are some of the fundamental things that allow you to be like basically a reasonable member of our society. So though a lot of that happens early on. Great. Just to move on to some of the heart of this. So what I'd like to acknowledge is that if you're a kid and you're struggling with these things, what it can lead to is this vicious cycle. So picture, if you will, a first grader who's in art class. And this is just a totally random example that never happened to me, so we'll just go with this. And this first grader is doing their darndest to draw, whatever it is that they're supposed to draw. And unfortunately for the first grader, this kid has no natural talent in art. And so the results are pretty bad. The drawings look kind of comical. And the teacher walks by and bursts out laughing. and says, Michael, again, random example, not me, of course, are you trying to make the class laugh? And Michael's not a good artist, but he knows enough to know when he's been caught, because it's happened to him. And he says, oh, yeah. And he realizes that he's not good at art because the teacher just cracked up. And so now he realizes, I'm terrible at art, so why bother to try? So next time, draw something deliberately funny, because those skills are never going to get there. So you kind of quickly put yourself into a camp, right? Like, you don't have to raise your hand for this, but if I were to ask, how many of you are terrible at math? A couple of you would just be like, me, I'm terrible at math. And I would think in my head, well, you might not be terrible at math, but you might feel like you are because you never succeeded and no one ever kind of taught you, and they kind of gave up on you early and you learned to give up on yourself. But you'd still feel like, no, he's wrong. I'm terrible at math, you know? Or how many of you are terrible at musical instruments or whatever? Don't we all have something, right? Something where you've kind of made up your mind about yourself. Is, I'm not good. I can't do that. So this cycle is kind of where it goes. And I just want to read you a quick example. May I borrow your book? Heard this is a pretty good book. So it's just an example of a kid where he got caught in this cycle. So I was meeting with him first time meeting him, and he was pretty stressed out because he was going to be kicked out of his private school down the road from here, actually, if he didn't do better academically. He was a smart kid and a great athlete, but he's very, very anxious, and he tightened up before tests. So he had a game of Trivial Pursuit out in his porch, and I said, well, how much would it make you anxious if I were to ask you to answer one of these questions? Scale 1 through 5. He said, oh my gosh, that'd be a 4. Like, whoa, 4 out of 5. I mean, it's just playing a game, Trivial Pursuit. And he said he was willing to try, but it was very anxiety-inducing for him. I said, well, all right, since you're willing to try, I'm going to move ahead. What are the 2 biggest cities in Australia? He said, well, I know Sydney is one of them, but I don't know any other cities in Australia, so I can't choose another city. I said, okay, what if I were to list for you some choices instead? So you don't have to remember it, you just have to recognize it. So like I could list a few, like Perth and Brisbane, and he said, still a 4. Still really terrible. I was like, wow, okay. So I said, let's put the whole thing aside. Don't worry about it. And he kind of like shoulders down, visibly relaxed. And I said, let me show you this pressure point on your hand. So I showed him this. You can Google it, pressure point hand, and showed him how to kind of squeeze here. And I said, give that a try. And I'm going to walk you through a progressive relaxation exercise, just so we can kind of see what happens. So I started walking him through it, and he said, oh, I'm feeling much better, like a 2. And I said, okay, so while you're pressing your hand, close your eyes and imagine your face relaxing. Just no expression on it at all. Let your eyes relax. Let your jaw relax. Melbourne, he yelled out. What? I said. He said, it's Melbourne. That's the other biggest city. Oh, I was stunned because I was just trying to get him to relax. I wasn't actually trying to get him to answer the question at that point because he clearly didn't know it. He had no idea but he did. So what's going on there? And it's kind of a lockdown, or the opposite of a lockdown. I'll just give you an image to help make it clear. For those of you who don't know this book, The Whole Brain Child by Dr. Daniel Siegel and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, it's a wonderful look at the human brain and especially how kids' brains develop. And so what they do is they have you make this kind of model with your hand. So if you just go like this for a quick sec, everybody, tuck your thumb in, wrap your fingers over your thumb. This is a working model of your brain. This part here where the knuckles are represents this, your prefrontal cortex. That's where your executive function skills reside. So they're here. Now, if you go like this, lift your fingers up, this is underneath the amygdala. That is the fight or flight thing. Amygdala, by the way, is a great word for any cocktail party. Just throw it around a few times. So, all right, so here's the thing. We're normally like this, we're like, hey, how's it going? Having a conversation. It's rational. We're normal people. Hey, how are you? Good, how are you? Okay, now, what are the two biggest cities in Australia? I don't know. Who doesn't know? I don't know who's talking. It's my amygdala, right? Kids freaking out, can't access it. So there's this, they call it flipping the lid. It's this basically an inability to access that part of your brain. So if you've ever been in an argument with your child or your significant other and it kind of escalated a little bit, you weren't having an argument with each other. You two were having an argument with each other. So it, kind of goes like this, your kid's home, and you come in, you're like, oh, how was your day, honey? Fine. What did you learn today at school? Nothing. This is a 7th grader, by the way. Nothing. Oh, hey, how are you feeling about that? Don't you have a test coming up tomorrow? Now, what's this? This is the parent getting a little bit anxious, but thinking that they're hiding it from their kid? No, you're not. Because we all have these things called mirror neurons, where what someone else feels, we can kind of feel it. So if you're watching a rerun of Friends or something, you hear they're laughing and there's the laughter, the fake laughter or whatever, maybe it's real. And we want to laugh, even if the joke isn't that great, but we feel like laughing. Or you're watching a scary movie, and there's the dun 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 dun, or you feel that your own sense of like fright and fear. Those are mirror neurons. And so when we go like this, our kids have mirror neurons and they're especially sensitive to us. And so we go, you got that test? And they're like, get out of my life. You don't understand anything, yada, yada. And then we're like, don't talk to me like that, young man, young lady, whatever, right? And it just boot, do. And it's ricocheting, which is why you need to give a timeout, but not to your kid, because unless they're 4 or younger, they're not going to listen to you. You need to give yourself a timeout. Like, I see we're not getting anywhere. I'm just going to take a breather. I'll come back, actually, a rational human being. You miserable brat. So that is a really just, I think, a helpful way to conceptualize it on the big picture. So when I said there'd be a heavy dose of kind of strategic thinking tonight, the strategic thing is that we need to be able to be connected to our kids before we can actually get anywhere with them. Or as we like to say, R before T, reach before teach, or relationship before task. So when we want our kids to be focused on their homework, gosh darn it, it doesn't matter what we want, like not even a little, because we can stand there and hover over them, which is a waste of our time, and they're not going to be as effective anyway, and they're never going to become independent, which is the goal, right? Those college rooms are small. I've seen them. You do not want to move into college with your kids. So we want to get to this point where the R before the T, the relationship before the task, because if we do that, we actually have a chance to get their buy-in and to influence them and to overcome their resistance. How do you do it? Well, there are a lot of different ways, and many of them are tried and true, really proven methods. Now, by the way, I'm not going to say that there's never a place to just say to your kid, gosh darn it, you're doing this, yada, yada, yada. Sometimes being a drill sergeant may absolutely be necessary. There may be something that's so critical, but you don't get a lot of those cards before they just kind of tune you out and eventually just do what they want. And, being a helicopter parent, we've all heard that derogatory term for us, at times. I'm not saying that's never helpful. When your kid's like 3, it's probably pretty useful. But when they're in 7th grade, oh no. 10th grade, no. They need to. I had a mom, I was presenting in New York. This is a big school, and mom yelled out from the back, should I wake up my kid in the morning? I yelled back, how old? Junior in high school. I said, no. That's it. What's the consequence? He gets a tardy, he loses credit. How's that your problem? How's he ever going to learn? So, I understand there are kids with real challenges. We want to help them along, but our time is short, and we need to be able to, get them increasingly independent. So, as an example for a proven method to help them, our kids don't always want to talk about their homework and how we can help them. And, has anyone else had that experience? A few of us? Okay. So one thing we can do is to do what's called knocking before entering. So just, hey, I was wondering if we could talk about your homework. No? Okay. That's maybe, so you might get a flat out no. Or we could go with this, a forced choice. Yeah, I want to talk, you don't actually have to knock though. I want to talk to you about your homework. Is this a good time? No. When would be a better time for you? Okay, well, if hell does freeze over, where can I find you? So, yeah, that's Steve Martin. So fine. Or you could give a forced choice. You could say, I would like to talk to you. It's important. It's got to be before the end of the weekend. Now you've put up some parameters, but you've made clear we're going to be talking about this. But you get to have some power in this too. There's a little bit of empowerment, but at the end of the day, you're a parent, and you said this is a must. We need to talk about it. Those kinds of things matter because if we don't do it, what we get is we don't get as far as we possibly could. So I'm going to give an example from my younger daughter now. Thankfully, none of you know her, so this won't embarrass her at all. She knows I give this one, don't worry. So I was stopping by her room and saw that she was studying for a bio test last year. It was a hard test. And she had Quizlet up. How many of you know what Quizlet is? Great. So online flashcards, it's free. It's really neat, instantaneous, non-judgmental feedback for kids, different levels of games. It's got a lot of great aspects to it. So she's got her the flashcards, and she's doing them. And I'm like, oh, good girl, she's working hard. But then I see this other thing. On the side of the screen, like the right side, there's all these ads popping up. They're all for swimsuits. Like, come on. That's got to be the biggest distraction ever. So I just very gently said, oh, hey, honey, is those ads distracting you? No, Dad, they're not. Okay. I knew they probably were. I was pretty confident. But I'd asked the wrong question, so I couldn't really backtrack and call her a liar, right? So I was like, oh, I'm stuck. I'm like, well, honey, I could remove those ads, and it would just be, like $15, and it's no big deal. I'm happy to pay for it. No, I'm good, Dad. Thanks. I'm like, So I said, all right, honey, well, I look forward to seeing you come back with a nice A grade on that. Normally I don't care about grades, but, I thought, well, she's going to, say no to my offer. I said, I'm looking forward to you coming back with a nice A on that test. Walk out, And I come home a couple weeks later, or whatever it was, a week or something, and she brings home her test, said, here's my grade. It was an A. I was so disappointed. You get it, right? I didn't have a chance to be a snarky dad and see, you should have, you should have listened to me. But nope, now I said, oh, good job. But then this happened. For her next test, this is what her screen looked like. She's studying for her bio test. She's studying with Quizlet. How many of you can see what that is? Yeah, what is that? Piece of paper with a piece of Scotch tape up there, right? I was like, oh, look at her. She's blocked out all the ads herself, right? So exactly. I said, why'd you do this? And she said, well, it was a harder test. This test needed me to do that. The other one didn't. So who's the smart one after all? My kid, right? So my question for you is, should I have told her the first time, no, I'm just doing it. I'm going to take out those ads because I knew that would help her or not. How many of you think, yeah, you're the dad, just take away those stupid ads? And you're like, no, better for her to figure it herself. I mean, this was an opportunity for her. She got to see for herself what worked and what didn't work. In the long run, I'm not going to be there to babysit. So she got to make that learning for herself. So these kinds of tools are you'll notice the title, Daughter Knows Best. Sometimes we think we do, and sometimes we're right. But making mistakes is part of the game. This is the model that we try to use with our kids. I do, we do, you do. First, there's modeling. I'll show, when they're younger and showing them, yeah, well, you're stuck. I'm happy to show you how I would do this. I'll write a thesis statement and show you what I think a good thesis statement looks like so you get it, or I'll show you how I would solve that problem. And as I get older, I want to shift from doing it in front of them and showing them how I think it through by modeling it thinking out loud, to, hey, what do you think? And removing all that scaffolding and saying things like, well, remember last time you did this? What's next? What do you think the next step is? And then we move to just, they do it, and just giving a little bit of feedback. Wow, that was really good. What you did there in that opening paragraph totally grabbed my attention. That piece was really interesting. Trying to avoid that heavy praise, that is just like, you're so great, just, wow, that was really interesting what you did right there. So it's not all about me, it's about really her. And then we can step back completely, which leads to ultimately this. Where do we intervene as parents? 3 possible places. This, we say to our kids, you just got to try harder. You got to pull yourself up. Don't be lazy. When I was a kid, we lived in a little paper bag at the bottom of the lake, right? Monty Python. so try harder. That's one. This one is, you're so smart. You can do it. And this one is, I'll do it for you, basically. I'll get you the better results somehow. I'll get very, very involved. I'll do your science project for the most part. You sign your name. All right. Or perhaps there's a 4th option. So let me ask, how many of you vote for 4 choices? Try harder. You're so smart. I'll pretty much get you out of this. I'll bail you out. Or I'm going with option number 4 behind the curtain. I don't know what it is, but it's probably better. Okay, option number 1, please try harder, darn it. Come on. We got a couple, great. All right, option 2, you're so smart, you can do this. Confidence boosting, great, we got a bunch. And option 3, I'm going to carry you through this for the most part. Option 4, maybe there's something better. All right, so let me just say the problem with this one, because it got enough votes, it merits it. The problem with telling our kids how smart they are is 2 things. If they're doing badly, then their thought is, and now they think I'm lazy too. Not only am I dumb, which I already know, but now they're saying, oh, you're so smart, which means they don't get how hard I'm working. And they think I'm just not trying, or it must be that. That must be what they really think. And the other thing is Carol Dweck. How many of you know her mindset stuff? Okay, great. So we kind of are teaching them this fixed mindset that either you're smart or you're not. And what we want our kids to have is this idea of, this is not easy yet. But if I work at it, it'll get a little bit easier. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a genius at math or the world's greatest artist, but I could get better. And I actually had a friend teach me some drawing skills when I was a teacher many years ago. And I saw, oh my gosh, I can get a little better. And actually liked it. But there is another way. And the other way is to try small experiments and to say to our kids, I'm not sure how this will go for you, but how would you like to put in no extra effort, no extra at this point, but get better results? Almost no one will say no to. Same effort, but I think you could get better results. And I'm not promising, but would you be willing to try something for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, and see how it goes? Most kids will give you 5 minutes. So what are some of those small experiments you could try? Here are a few. So this is where we go to tools and tactics. Okay. Here's one example. Same effort, better results. Sometimes we get lists. This is, by the way, one that I use. I use this app called One Big Thing. It's on my iPhone. And I don't know if any of you get lost in your lists and all the things you're supposed to do and prioritizing, but I found this to be incredibly useful because I can put one thing that is the most important thing up there. It's very visually clear. And then those are the littler things. And then down there, those are other things I might do, but really probably not going to happen. Okay? But at least I feel better that I wrote them down. So you get, anyone who's anxious, this is good. You get to put down all those things that you're not going to do. But at least you don't have to feel guilty about neglecting them. You put them down. But that's the thing you want to focus on. So that's one example of a tool. Here's another example of a tool. Fast break homework plan. Very basic, very simple thing. Kid comes home from school, and you say to them, home, I don't want you to do your homework. I just want you to make a plan for your homework so we can see if it's realistic for the night. And they make this little plan. And this is great for, say, a middle school kid, like at this level. A fifth grader might pull it off, may not need to, but middle school kid could use something like this pretty well. And they put down their time estimates, when they're going to start, when they'll finish, which shows how much time they expect. And you know what's going to happen when they do this? One, they're going to at least make a plan. Two, they'll say, oh, you know, gee, this will have me up till 9:30. And three, they're never going to do it. They're going to be completely wrong. But it's data. And the data are friendly. Data is really, data is a valuable tool as a parent, because you can come back to them the next day and say, you remember you said your history you'd start at 5? Do you know what time you actually started? I don't know, 5:15? It's actually 7. Now, if you nag them the whole time, this experiment doesn't work. You're like, it's 5 o'clock. You said it would be 5 o'clock. Oh my God, it's 5:01. Why are you on me? Because I'm worried you're not, rah, la, la, right? Remember this? So, yeah, that was tonight, Michael. We still remember it. So you want to remember this, because once you do this, you kind of lose the kid. So, but it's data. And then they say, fine, and they give you that perhaps a disgruntled response, but you've made your point, you can walk away. Third night, you say, I just want to see your plan. That's all I'm asking for. Maybe you notice they've shifted from 5 o'clock start, to a 4 o'clock start. You start to see that just your observations, you are making a data-based observation. That's not a judgment. It's not a judgment. I mean, you could make it into a judgment. You started at 7. You could do that. But there's no reason for it to become that. It can just very simply be an observation. And then any one of those data points. So that takes 5 minutes to make one of these. If they're older, they could do a more complex one that has something like this, where they're mapping out exam schedules. This is a real student. This was a game changer for him. And he went from a student who had never spent more than 30 minutes a night on his homework to being someone who's putting in 4 hours and putting in massive time on his exams. Very well, as a student in Sudbury, actually, Lincoln Sudbury. Why he was avoiding the work, part of it was giving him a structure in a way that he could just see it and realize what he needed to do. Another tool, and one of my all-time favorites, this one. So, student comes home, they've got a test the next day in biology, they don't want to take the test, and you've got 2 students here. Here's student A, who says, this thing is so easy, I don't even need to study for it. I know it all. I don't know if any of your kids have ever been like that, or I know it, I don't need to study. But it happens. And then you've got this other kid over here who's, I'm freaking out, there's no point in studying, I'm going to fail no matter what I do, so why bother to study? Interesting how these 2 kids, one who knows everything and one who knows nothing, both come to the conclusion that they aren't going to study. That's amazing. But it happens. So what you do there is you say, okay, I'm not going to argue that you know everything. I'm not going to argue with you that you don't know anything. Just put it down. Just see what you know and what you don't know. Just color code it or put check marks and X's and question marks. And what they represent here are 3 different types of data, 3 different levels of knowing. This is why we call it the DK. Level 1 is the K. I know this stuff, and I don't need to study it, and that's in green. Green for go. Then you got the blue. I don't know why it's blue. It probably should be yellow. But it is, I don't know this stuff super well, but I remember learning it. I know it'll come back to me. That's the DK. Don't know it real well. It could be the KK, kind of know it. But I will study that and get to it. And then you've got this horrible stuff in, you got this horrible stuff in red, and that's the DK. That's the stuff I didn't even know I didn't know it. I didn't even know I didn't know it. I had no idea it was on the exam. I don't even remember seeing it in my whole life. What is this? This is the stuff that when your kid comes home and says, it was so unfair, they put all this crazy stuff on the test, she never taught it, It's like, really? Really? Is that really what happened? So that's the red. Now I'm going to ask you, what's the benefit to a kid of doing this from an executive function point of view? How might this help with stress, with time management, prioritizing, planning, organizing, any of those key executive function skills? Any thoughts on that? How might this possibly help? Any thoughts? You guys have done great so far tonight.
It provides direction.
Okay, it provides direction through prioritization, right? Shows you, hey, so where would you prioritize? Where do you think a kid might want to prioritize here? Why the blue? Could be the blue. Why the blue?
Because you sort of know it, so you would spend less time and then feel better faster.
So for a kid who's a little anxious, the blue is a great place to start, right? Because they can immediately move more to the green, and now it's, oh my gosh, I've got like 2/3 of this out of the way. I just have a remaining small part. Why might some other people go for red first? Because that's also a reasonable place. It's going to need more time, so it's going to be very informative in seeing, oh boy, this red stuff's going to take a long time. I better get to that right away. Any other thoughts on this? So maybe they like the challenge. So maybe for the student who finds it boring and stupid, when they get to the red, they go, oh, all right, bring it on. I better get to it. So exactly, it could be for that kid. Some kids like to work under pressure. Great. I'm going to give you one more thought, which is this, self-advocacy. When kids go in to see the teacher, it usually doesn't go very well. And there's a reason for it, because it typically starts like this. Kid goes in and says to the teacher, my mom told me I have to come in and see you. It might be, or it might be someone else, but it might. And the teacher, remember, has mirror neurons, right? And what are they picking up? What kind of vibes are they getting from that kid? I'm bored. I have to be here. This is dumb. I don't care about this. The teacher naturally feels a little bit like, yeah, fine. What can I do for you? Right? Well, I just don't get it. Oh, like, really? Like, teachers don't go into the profession, just a little inside scoop since I taught for 8 years and was a school principal. Teachers don't go into the job for the fame and the fortune. They go in because they like to help people and because they love what they're doing. So if you have a kid radiating is not even the right word, but just, evoking boredom and the sense of like, I don't want to be here, that's like, it's an insult to injury, right? So the teacher doesn't know really how to work with that. And what happens is, your child, who you're home celebrating, like, my kid's going for extra help. My kid, I'm a great parent. I got her there. I got him there. But really, everyone's just annoyed, and they're probably annoyed with you. So your kid's annoyed. The teacher's annoyed. All right. Different scenario though. Your kid comes in and says, "Hey, I studied a bit." And before I went further, I realized I have some questions. There's some things I don't really get and some things I really do. Can I just show you what I've been working on? Teacher says, yeah, sure. And And they work together. And they start to solve a problem together. And the teacher's invested. And what we call this sometimes is money in the bank. This is a deposit. This is why the teacher came to the profession in the first place, so that they could help that kid go to the next level. And your kid feels it because of those neurons. And they feel really good. And now what happens is they both want to do that again, right? Kid wants to come back and see that teacher who likes them. Teacher's hoping that kid will come back. They can help them again. Positive cycle, moving forward. Does that all make sense? So I love this tool and any like that for that reason. Finally, just to wind up and then have time for a few questions, there's this wonderful saying, where there's a will, there's a way. If you have the willpower, you'll get there. Is that what this says? Now, it says where there's a way, there's a will. It's just as important. They're both true. Problem, as I indicated before, try harder, come on, get me 20. It might work. There are kids that respond to that. And they'll respond to it from the right person, like a coach. Their sports coach, sometimes that'll work. But it generally doesn't work with parents as well. So this is very different. If we show them a way through the woods, and not like, hey, good luck, little red, hope you make it. Watch out, there might be something in the woods you want. No, if we walk them through the path, we do the I do, we do, you do, right? Come along with me, let me show you. Yeah, here are all the safe ways to get there. Next time, let's do it together. Let me see how you do it. I'm going to give you a few questions along the way. Third time, let me walk you through again. let me just see how you do it. I'll give you some feedback. Next time, yeah, good luck. You got this. Don't look at Snapchat while you're going, though. You just keep walking. So we can get them so that they feel really good about making that walk by themselves and finding their own paths. So that's the goal of all of this. I'm going to double down to end on the title. I really do believe this. I don't think it's just just because we say it. I think it's because if we really believe it, it's going to make a huge difference. I'll see if there are any questions. If not, I may do one little demonstration with you. So, any questions before we stop for the night? Questions about your kids or yourself or your family or whomever? Yes.
I have a few questions. So, what's the major impact with kids that do a lot of activities or sports after school and they still have to come home and be home? Where can we find the right balance, or where do we draw the line?
Yeah.
Their friends are doing it and they may want to be doing it, or maybe the parents want them to do it. So,
Yeah. So with so many kids, and particularly at the high school level, but even younger sometimes, our kids are in this place where they want to do 3 honors courses or 4 honors courses and AP classes, and then they've got sports, and they play a musical instrument, and they do this and that and the other thing. So first thing is, there's this idea that I would like to start with. You can do almost anything, but you can't do everything. You certainly can't do everything well. And I think we've got this idea sometimes that, more is better. But it's sometimes, I think when our kids are very young, like elementary school, good to expose them to a whole bunch of things. As they get older, it's good for them to eliminate activities. There's actually an activity in the book that I have. It's a chart that we used with our older daughter, who's now in college, where she had all these things she was doing. Tap and jazz and ballet and school and cello lessons. And it was so many things. And she really liked them all. That was the hard part. So we made this little matrix. I mean, this is going to sound a little over the top, but it's the way I think sometimes. And we just matched them all up. We did like activity versus activity. And in the matrix, you could then see which ones won out. And it turned out certain activities won, and there was one that got 0 votes when it came down to it. And she didn't entirely eliminate it, but she stopped getting private lessons. She stopped spending a lot of time on it. She said, I'll do it a little, just for fun. So I think you can have certain things where you're all in, certain things where it's a little, and certain things where you just let it go. And I think that that's the important thing, is to say, when you're prioritizing, how important is this? So it doesn't mean, you have to drop everything, but you can't treat everything as being equally important. You have to make those hard decisions. You had one more question, and then I saw you had a question too.
yeah. So, Russian math, for instance.
Yes.
Let's say there are kids who do well in school, but we as parents want them to continue or to gain more knowledge.
Yes.
Is that a good thing, or is it a bad thing if it's too much?
It depends. Again, if this is your number one out of all the school activities, really excelling at math is one of the top priorities, top 2 or 3. Yeah, why not? Especially if your kid really likes it, if they love math, and they have an aptitude for it, and you see a chance to to really excel. Now, ultimately, if the kid's like, I hate this, math, no spasiba for me, isn't that? Thank you, right? No thanks, no thank you. At some point, you keep pushing it, then you get the opposite. You get anti-math. You get the, I hate math. You get the, I hate violin or whatever it is. So if it's something where there's both an interest, I always say, if you want to find motivation, find the intersection of the talent and the passion. And if you have to choose between talent and passion, go with passion. Because with passion, you're often willing to persevere, put in the hard work necessary to develop a talent for it. But I don't see anything wrong with going all in on something. It's just you can't go all in on everything. So let me just see, there was another question over here.
Detecting anxiety in your children, is it a potential problem with their executive functioning that's causing the anxiety, or is the anxiety causing the issues with executive?
Yay, I love that question. So chicken and egg, it's both. And it's really good to try to figure out which is at the root of it. one, picture a kid who can't pay attention in class because they get distracted so easily. And every moving thing, the ticking of the clock is loud to them, right? And a little movement in the room just sends them spinning. And so they missed everything that the teacher just said. What? And the teacher's staring at them and the whole class is staring at them. Going to make them anxious, right? So that is a case where an executive function skill, paying attention, it's compromised. And so you're going to feel really anxious in class. Walking into that room is going to make you anxious every time, especially if it's a teacher that's not sympathetic or chides you or mocks. If you get home and you've got your homework and you can't figure out the directions, it's going to make you anxious. On the other hand, let's say it's a kid who just runs anxious. Everything makes them anxious. They worry that the stove is left on. They worry about, death and dying and, and all sorts of things all the time, more than kids do, normally. That worry is going to preoccupy you and make you so stressed out. How can you pay attention if you're anxious? You're like this. All other skills are inaccessible at that time. Just a quick little thing, something that my wife over here taught me, who's a psychologist, but it's called 5-finger breathing. Real easy thing. So just kids anxious, teach them this. Just as they breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out. And if 5-finger breathing isn't sufficient, you know where I'm going with this. Yeah, 10-finger. The nice thing about it is they can do it during a math test or before a math test. Just no one's going to know. They don't have to sit there and go, and do the kind of meditation I do. They don't have to get up and do downward dog in the middle of math class. Not going to work. They can just do this little exercise. That might be one way to see, okay, can they manage their anxiety? If they can, then it may be that they do have other issues that keep making the anxiety recur. It's a great question. But you do want to kind of get to that and figure out which is driving which. And it may vary by situation. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Yes?
I'm wondering, you haven't talked about this, and so this might not tie in, I don't know. But in terms of kids who are on medication for ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
do they really learn these skills for getting things done, or is it kind of the medicine doing it for, in other words, if you took away the medicine, are they going to forget everything they learned in terms of self-help?
So almost no matter what I say now, some people are going to go, that's not true. Medication's a pretty touchy issue. So I'll give you my take, and I read articles about this virtually every day. I've met with Ned Hallowell in his office to talk to him. He's a local expert, actually a national expert. There was a big article in Esquire magazine the other day, The Drugging of the American Boy, which was very anti-medication, and you'll get people having very strong feelings on both sides. I'll also recommend for you checking out Russell Barkley, the nation's leading expert on ADHD, and all the dangers that happen without treating ADHD, including literally a shorter lifespan because of the poor decision making that can happen with ADHD. So medication, to medicate or not to medicate? The answer, I hope, of course, is it depends. It depends on the severity of the issue, the age of the child, what medication, how responsive the kid is to medication, all of those kinds of things. To answer your question about the learning that occurs, I would think of it this way. If you had trouble reading and everything was being taught to you up on the board, it could be that you couldn't see the board. That's medication, because you need glasses to see the board. And you need medication sometimes for kids that really need it, just to be able to be present enough that you can actually learn the skills. But having glasses on doesn't teach you to read at all. So let's say you put really good glasses on a 3-year-old, they're still not going to read. And if you have glasses on a kid who was having reading difficulties, and now we found out, oh my God, they couldn't see the board all this time. Well, they're still going to need to learn their phonics. OU, ooh as in through, ow as in loud. They're still going to need to learn all that. They're going to need to learn every aspect of what it means to be a reader, from basic pronunciation to semantics and meaning and all that. Well, with ADHD, the medication is simply something that allows a kid to be in a place to learn, but it doesn't give them the skills, it doesn't give them the knowledge and insight of what learning is. It will give them the ability to pay better attention, because it can make boring things less boring. It can give the ability to have dopamine levels higher and have other neurotransmitters activated. So yeah, it has a real impact. If you take away the medication, it's not that you wouldn't remember anything, it's that you might be sluggish, bored, uninterested, easily distracted. But figuring that out is a journey for families, and for some, not medicating is a great decision. Learning tools, strategy, skills, that's often the way you want to start, especially with the younger the kid, the more you want to kind of really think through the medication issue. As they get older, the consequences are a little less impactful on brain development and sleep and weight and all sorts of issues that can happen with the medications. Great question. Did it answer it enough?
I get that they're not going to unlearn the things they learned in terms of information in the brain, but I guess in terms of the tools, like, are they still going to?
It depends. So what you will find, if someone has medication, what you'll find is generally, if it's the right medication for the right kid, is elevated attention and elevated motivation. Okay? So will they use the tools? Not if they're boring. Not if there's something else more enticing. So without the medication, yeah, they have the tool. Are they going to use it? Maybe, maybe not. How many of us start habits January 1, January 15th, why did I join the gym? I'm never going back. Well, I'm not saying, everyone should medicate and then we'll all go see you all at the gym. It's just that is a tool to artificially raise what may be a depressed level of engagement. So, among other things. I appreciate you guys have done a great job. It's been a nice time with you. I'm going to stick around in the back for individual questions. That is the wonderful Mary Minnick in the back, who works at Beyond BookSmart, runs our New England region, and she'll be available selling books. And also, if you have questions about our coaching, which we do, in people's homes and so forth, let us know. We're happy to help. And we'll be around for the next several minutes. Thank you very much.